Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Ethier. I'm the School Building Committee Chair. Thank you for joining us tonight for this important forum. I want to welcome you on behalf of the School Building Committee members who have put in a tremendous amount of volunteer time on this project. We want to make clear that this is the first of what will be many forums on this project. And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Hahi to make a few introductory remarks.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. I am Dr. Paul Hahi, Superintendent of Schools for the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District. Thank you so much for making the time to join us this evening. We're here tonight to talk about the potential renovation or replacement of David Prouty High School. We want to share why the district has requested this building project, what options are being explored, and how long this will take and what it may cost. We also want to gather your input on the options being explored by the School Building Committee, and we'll take time to answer your questions about the project as well. First, a little background. In 2011, the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District conducted a feasibility study process to explore the renovation or replacement of David Prouty High School. That process ended unsuccessfully in 2012. After the school faced a difficult accreditation review that called the district out for deficiencies in our science labs and various spaces throughout the building, the district reapplied to the Mass School Building Authority for admission into the core grant program to explore once again, as the district had done earlier in 2012. The idea of a major renovation or replacement of David Prouty. 8 years passed between the end of one unsuccessful building project to the start of this project. The process of a public school building project typically takes at least 5 years from start to finish. We're very much at the beginning of this process. I want to stress that all school building committee meetings have been held publicly and available to you to watch. We will also continue to host public forums throughout this 5-year process. Working with the Mass School Building Authority is a complicated process. We have to work with their guidelines and calendar, but the advantage of working with the Mass School Building Authority grant program is that the MSBA will assist the project by paying for more than half the project costs. The MSBA pays its share from the sales tax revenue. As you can see on the slide, $15.4 billion in payments have been made to cities and towns. This revenue has been generated by 1 cent of the sales tax going to the MSBA to pay for school construction and renovation. And over 95,000 jobs have been created since 2005. That means you already are contributing to the school building projects in other communities every time you go to the store. At least 2 town meetings, the residents of Spencer and East Brookfield committed to pay for this feasibility study. As a result, we formed a school building committee, hired a project manager, and a team of architects and engineers. Working with the MSBA and our design team, we have conducted an enrollment study and a lengthy educational visioning process throughout the earlier modules. On October 26th, the School Building Committee will conclude this phase of the work and vote to send the project to MSBA with a request to move the project forward into schematic design and Module 4. During schematic design, the specific details of the project will be developed with the architects and engineers, the school, and the community's input. The architects and engineers have already thoroughly surveyed the building and site. And as an aside, you may have seen photos posted on our social media accounts and website of current core samples being taken, even as late as yesterday. They have held several focus group sessions throughout the visioning process to develop a new educational plan for an updated David Prouty High School. And the district has had surveys of our families and community for their input on the strengths and weaknesses of the current building. At this time, I'd like to turn this part of the presentation over to Mr. Ethier.
Thank you, Dr. Hahi.
Mhm.
Working with the design team, the school building committee explored 5 preliminary approaches to repair, renovation, or new construction. You can see in this slide the existing building at the top, then options of keeping it the way it is. On the second line, there were 3 renovation options. And at the bottom, there is the option of building an entirely new school, which would be on the same property. These are the 3 of these approaches would have tried to keep the existing classroom building. The committee voted against this approach. The committee supported renovation option 3 and the option of new construction, and those ideas were moved forward for further development. Tonight, we are asking you for your input on the options we're still reviewing. We have narrowed to these 2 approaches because they meet our district's educational goals and long-term facility goals. We are also required to continue to keep in front of the community the cost of a base repair project that would not meet our educational goals. The cost of the base repair shows us that we could expect to pay as a community to maintain and upgrade the existing building without making educational improvements. As a reminder, the MSBA, if we choose to keep the building as it is, allowing our school to fall further, other school districts, then we miss out on the opportunity to have more than half the cost of the project paid for by the MSBA. We will have the architects talk about the 2 options in a little bit. The important point we want to make is that only a major renovation or new construction project would fully meet the educational goals the district has laid out. Principal York will talk more about those goals. Both options will provide similarly sized teaching spaces, modern science labs, a new classroom wing, a new gym and vocational spaces and admin spaces. Both options will completely update the athletic fields, track bleachers, parking, and landscape, making the school healthier and more functional for community use year-round. During the presentation, you're likely to have questions. To keep us on track, I ask that you ask questions in the chat function of your Zoom. Our team will see your questions and line them up for a panel to answer. We will answer as many questions as we can and will publish a written copy of the Q&A. Before we begin, we would like to do a quick check-in and find out who is here in attendance tonight and find out how you heard about the event. We're going to ask you 2 questions. Please answer by clicking all the boxes that are appropriate for you and your household. First, tell us about yourself. Are you a student, a parent, a resident of East Brookfield, a resident of Spencer, a local business owner, an employee of the school district, or an alumni of David Prouty High School? Second, how did you hear about this forum? Word of mouth, district newsletter, district postcard, city website, cable access, robocall, or other? Thank you. Now I'm going to pass it on to our architects to talk about the existing building while you're finishing up that survey. Someone.
I think we'll just give this a second to register some more votes.
Can we move on and keep the poll open or not?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with a little history. The building that has served as David Prouty High School was built 55 years ago in 1966. While there have been minor repairs over the years and an elevator addition in the 1990s, there has never been a major building renovation. The building was built to 1960s standards before any energy crisis. There are original single pane windows and uninsulated doors. This is the original building cladding, a mixture of mostly brick and some stone. The building performs poorly for its basic use as a school because of these leaking windows and doors that lose heat, the poor solar orientation of the main classroom wing that causes glare and overheating, and the lack of adequate insulation in the roof, slab, and walls. Should I keep going, Dory? Yeah.
Yep.
The age of the roof varies by section. This is the oldest section of the roof that needs to be replaced and has leaked repeatedly. Some areas show ponding, which is structurally dangerous. Other roof sections are in relatively good shape. This is a typical classroom. This is the same configuration of classrooms that was here when many of you went to school at David Prouty High School. A lot has changed in the world of education, but not a lot has changed in this building in how classrooms are organized, laid out, and furnished. The classrooms need abatement of asbestos-containing materials, better ventilation to address growing mold and health concerns, improvements in teaching technology and infrastructure, and more varied space sizes to accommodate different kinds of learning. The classroom areas also lack adequate space to support special education, counseling, and guidance. This is the typical undersized science lab with an adequate instructional technology, ventilation, and space for project work. It lacks hoods, sinks, and electrical capacity. Other spaces are equally deficient. Here in the lower corner, a former science lab is serving as the weight room for the PE program. Elsewhere, the school has inadequate and undersized PE and athletic resources, inadequate art spaces, and a total absence of appropriate vocational spaces. In 1966, there was no building code in Massachusetts. That means that the things that are required in schools today do not exist at David Prouty. It is a 3-story building with no fire sprinkler system. The unit ventilators do not meet current ventilation requirements and are too noisy according to current standards. There is no cooling of the classrooms or administrative spaces. There is insufficient dehumidification, which has caused mold issues, especially as we get longer summers. Many spaces have important accessibility and security concerns. There are also many aspects of the building and site that do not meet the needs of students and parents with disabilities. As many of you who have tried to attend sporting events know, you don't have to have a disability to find the athletic fields a challenge to enjoy. The fields and seating are all in need of reconditioning and upgrades. The track is undersized for MIAA events. The bleachers are not accessible, and the fields all need drainage improvements. Now I will, do we want to give the poll results at this point?
We gathered the results. You know, we can't pull them back up right now, so.
Oh, okay. Now I will turn the discussion over to Principal York.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz York, the current principal of David Prouty High School. From an educational perspective, the current school does not serve our needs. We have spaces we do not need, and we have a lack of space where we do need it. But it is also the layout of the school that is most challenging. It is a plan for an earlier era of education where students sat in rows, working alone, and seldom left the classroom. While our auditorium is a good size, we are not able to use it as we might because it is technologically out of date and does not meet ADA requirements. When we met in focus groups during the educational visioning process, we envisioned a more vibrant David Prouty with a circulation pattern that does not lock teachers and students in classrooms at the end of dead-end corridors, but instead encourages students to move from classrooms to project learning spaces, to vocational studios, to outdoor spaces, and back again. A school that enables both independent learning and social learning. We envisioned a facility that supports student and community use in the evenings, on weekends, and all year round. We envision our marketing, early education, environmental science, digital arts, and criminal justice programs. They are currently working with local businesses, and we envision them offering spaces and services on campus that support real needs in the community. Perception matters. When we surveyed families, the words they used to describe the building indicated to us very clearly that there is a perception problem here. And it explains why our community is growing faster than our school district's enrollment. Too many families have chosen to leave the district. We have begun to reverse this by bringing in our AP diploma program, our arts, fine arts and musical pathways, and our new vocational educational classes. But we need a building that supports these new, exciting, and expanding programs. Sadly, the district currently loses over $1 million a year to students who have left the district and are attending other schools. The high schools of today need to help students prepare for the real world by helping them learn how to think critically, collaborate, use technology effectively, and to practice the skills that employers need. These should be the priorities for our school building, our teaching, and our school culture. All of these points were raised along with many other to create this vibrant vision of a new David Prouty High School. And the program designers and architects listened to everything we said and came up with some really exciting designs. And I will pass it back over to the Jones-Whitsitt team now for them to describe how our vision became their drawings and models.
Thank you, Principal York. My name is Dory Brooks. I'm a principal at Jones-Whitsitt Architects. I'd like to tell you more about the options on the table. First off, I want to explain that I represent a team that includes engineers and consultants who've been working on this project since May. We all specialize in working in school projects, and we've been assessing the school's deficiencies, but also its strengths and its needs. Our goal is always to improve educational outcomes by improving educational facilities. As Mike explained, the process involved early conceptual study of 5 options, many of which did not meet the district's goals. We are now more deeply exploring these 2 options with the school building committee. The major renovation addition option proposes to keep and renovate the A wing of the current school where the cafeteria and auditorium are located and where the district has already invested in new highly efficient boilers. The new option builds an entirely new school west of the current school and then demolishes the existing school. In the add renovation option, the committee has consistently been concerned that the impact of a major project and how it would impact students who are in the school currently. That was one reason why this add reno option was preferred over others, because it allows us to keep the current classroom wing in place until a new classroom is built. The classroom wing is built. The option proposes demolishing the current undersized gym, then builds a new correctly sized gym, new locker rooms, and new PE spaces that can also be used by the community in evenings and weekends. It would also build a new classroom wing directly behind the current school at the base of the hill, so that the students can remain in the current classroom building until construction is complete. And then it moves to tear down the current classrooms and add a vocational tech wing, new media center, and administrative spaces, connecting the dots, essentially bringing the school together into one final program. During the project, probably over the summers, the existing A wing would be fully renovated, including the theater, the cafeteria, and the art spaces to the rear of the building. This simplified plan shows how the 4 major parts of the new school would encircle a 200 by 90-foot courtyard that's large enough to host all school gatherings and allow for outdoor teaching spaces. The courtyard also improves daylight to different parts of the building. I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Christian, who's muted. Can you unmute? No.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So Christian Whitsitt with Jones Whitsitt Architects. Thank you for attending tonight. So this is a site plan for the ad reno approach. And the proposed site plan makes some critical changes to the existing layout. While the kind of overall approach is similar, some critical changes have been made. The slope of the hill to the south of the building has been eased so that it creates some flat space for the new classroom wing that Dory was talking about to the south, as well as the courtyard. There's improved access around the new classroom wing, which allows emergency vehicles to totally circumnavigate the building. And pedestrian access and vehicular access is simplified and allows for better connection to the fields up the hill. A new curb cut will improve the connection to Route 9. The site's stormwater systems and landscaping would also be significantly improved throughout the site. So because of the shape of the site, we've actually had to rotate it 90 degrees. So now Route 9 is to your left on your screen. North is kind of left up. And this shows that we are planning on a full revamp of the entire site, including all of the athletic facilities. And so the sports fields would remain where they are, but would be improved with new bleachers, new track, new press box, an optional artificial turf upgrade for the main field, and drainage and sod improvements to all of the fields throughout, the baseball fields down below and the practice fields up above. Switching, this is now the all new option. So as Dory mentioned, putting the new building to the west of where the existing building is. And here we have kind of divided the site. By removing the existing building, you really open up the site quite a bit more. And so you have the ability to change some of the grading and really have a recreational facility that can be more closely accessed from Route 9. So there's terracing as you go up the hill, and the field has actually been moved down a little bit and rotated for solar orientation. There's parking near the new multi-purpose field, and then the practice fields up above. This option allows for the same level of quality results in athletics and parking improvements. It does require some more site work with this new option because of putting the new school to the west and revamping the athletic fields where the existing school is. So the costs are a little bit higher for this new option, particularly the site costs, as opposed to the ad reno approach. Now we're rotating back with Route 9 at the top and zooming in a little bit. And here you can see the existing building dashed in orange there, where we're proposing the new baseball and practice field. But you can see that the new school is completely to the west, and the benefit of this is that the new school could be constructed while the existing school is in session. Once the new school is done, the students can move into it and then demolish the existing school and do the site work in that area. We just wanted to note that in both cases, both the ad reno and the new construction option, there will be some temporary relocation required for athletic facilities. As Dory kind of showed in that graphic, for the ad reno, the gym would be demolished while school is still in session. So the district would have to lean on other schools in the district, Wire Village and Knox Trail, during construction, just for that interstitial period.
The new school option provides an opportunity to start from scratch, which is really a benefit to a district in many ways because educational standards have changed. So we wouldn't have as many constraints to work around. We would imagine that this new option would allow for the same size entirely of the auditorium, gymnasium, PE spaces, Voc spaces, and classrooms. But there's a little bit more flexibility in how we bring the plan together. We would still be able to provide more access to guidance, support, and project spaces nearer to the classrooms, and provide better space throughout the school for staff planning and collaboration, both for adults and students. But the school would not be built across 3 levels as it is currently. Instead, building in that area to the west, which is currently over near the parking area and the tennis courts, would allow us to have more of the school on one level. As you see here, it allows for an entry point at the admin area that would bring you into the heart of the school. And you would have access right away to both the arts wing, the auditorium, and the gymnasium facilities. And there's also the potential to have a rear entrance that could be used at night so that community members can basically access these large public assembly spaces without actually getting closer to the classrooms. The classrooms would be in 2 wings that are 2-story and are oriented east and west in their roof line to get ideal south and north solar orientation to the classrooms. This option also still allows for great access to outdoor learning areas. And as a whole, because it would all be new construction, it would probably be a little bit more energy efficient as a building. The new construction areas for both schools would allow for eventual photovoltaics to be installed by the district in the future on those areas that are newly built. We wouldn't put new photovoltaics on top of the current auditorium building in the renovation scheme, but you could do it in this area on more roof area, which is an advantage, but that would be a later project, not a part of this construction. We would just prepare for it. I'm going to turn it over to Gary Suter to talk a little bit about the costs of the project.
Thanks, Dory. Good evening. My name is Gary Suter, and I'm the business manager for the district. It is still really early in the project. We don't have a detailed design yet, but in our first phase of work, we looked at potential costs by taking comparable costs per square foot from other school projects and applying that to a school of our size and our time of construction. Next, we looked at the reimbursement formula used by the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or the MSBA. For tonight's discussion, we are using a reimbursement rate of about 52%. We estimate the total project cost to be around $87 million for the major renovation option and $91 million for new construction. Based upon the estimated MSBA reimbursement rate of approximately 52%, the local share is likely to be no more than $45.9 million for major renovation and $48.9 million for new construction. The project would be paid for by issuing bonds. These bonds would be amortized over a 30-year period. Each town would have the opportunity to approve the issuance of the debt by a 2/3 vote at a town meeting and an additional opportunity to approve a debt exclusion, which would be placed on a town election ballot. The debt exclusion allows the towns to pay their share of the loan over and above the restrictions of Proposition 2.5. When the debt is fully paid off, the tax increase goes away. We are at the point where the details of the project costs aren't clear enough that we can say how it would impact individual taxpayers. Our estimated project costs are conservative and for planning purposes only at this point. We are looking to, at this point, we are looking to commit to the development of a schematic design based on one of the options previously outlined. At this point, we want to take a moment and gauge your reaction. This is not a formal vote because the formal decision is made by the school building committee and eventually by the voters in an override. We just want to measure your reaction and give you a chance to ask questions about the plan before we start into the important questions of construction costs. So please tell us if you're more excited by the idea of a major addition renovation, all new construction, Either a reno or new is fine with me, or keep DPHS just as it is.
Thank you for your input. So I hope people can see the results there. We've left that up for a little while. It seems to have slowed down. So we're going to assume that everybody who wants to has weighed in, and that folks will probably send their input in elsewhere or keep thinking about it for a while. Here are the results for those of you who can still see that. It's really useful information. Thank you. Paul, next up is
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again. At the request of the school district and the Mass School Building Authority, the School Building Committee has explored whether it makes sense to plan for the inclusion of an 8th grade or a co-located district-wide pre-K program at the high school. We reviewed these options to be sure we are right-sizing the school for our long-term educational needs. Adding an 8th grade academy at Prouty would build in greater long-term flexibility for enrollment spikes because it would allow us to make a larger overall school. But it would also require redistricting, and it would add to the project cost. Those issues may make the inclusion of the 8th grade divisive enough to jeopardize the public vote for the project. Similarly, a district-wide pre-K program at the high school could benefit the pre-K program itself. Students in the early education vocational program could assist and observe in the preschool classrooms. A preschool program at Prouty would also free up space in East Brookfield Elementary, which we feel is needed for elementary grade classrooms that our environment trends suggest we will need down the road. We are interested in your views on this.
so in both the addition, renovation, and new option, we've designed those to allow for the addition of a full pre-K wing of 4 pre-K classrooms and support spaces in a way that's distinct from the main school building. The pre-K wing would include a separate entrance and separate play area for the pre-K children. In the add reno option, the pre-K is a south addition of the new gymnasium with a south-oriented playground and a west-oriented entry, different from the school's main entry. An 8th grade would fit perfectly over this and would connect to the main classroom wing so that students who are a part of the vocational program can go down into the pre-K to support it and then go back to class. In the all-new option, we take a similar approach. We would add an additional bar to the school towards the south to support a full pre-K, and again, would have a separate entrance and separate play area. The 8th grade wing would fit over top of this wing. If either of these options are not supported at this time in the district, the option remains to do an addition in these locations in the future if the district decides to expand the high school at a later time.
As the slide indicates, your input matters. At this time, we'd ask that you take a third poll. To close out this presentation, we want to open the poll again to ask for your views on the 8th grade and preschool options so that we can share your views with the School Building Committee as well as the Mass School Building Authority. Please let us know if you favor either one of these proposals. Are you one of the following? I support inclusion of an 8th grade at David Prouty High School. I do not support inclusion of an 8th grade at David Prouty High School. And when it comes to preschool, I support co-location of the pre-K at David Prouty High School, or I do not support co-location of a preschool at David Prouty High School. Please take a minute to complete this poll, ladies and gentlemen.
And this question seems to have a little bit more interest than the first one. Okay, I'm gonna end it now and share these results. So 56% support the idea of inclusion of an 8th grade and 44% do not. And 75% support the relocation of pre-K to David Prouty and 25% do not. Mike, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dory. Now we would like to open up a panel of speakers to answer your questions. I'd like to introduce our project manager, Phil Palumbo from Colliers International, and our architects from Jones Whitsett Architects, Margot Jones, Christian Whitsett, and Dory Brooks. And there's also members of the school building committee and administration on here to help answer any questions of yours. So again, you know, Dr. Hahi had spoken about it earlier. If you have any questions, send them in the comments and we'll put them in order and we'll answer them for you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So at this point, we don't have any questions in the chat, but like Paul and Mike mentioned, that is your stage to ask the questions. Yeah, I guess one other thing I'll highlight for folks that would prefer in-person public forums or know folks that didn't attend tonight because they would prefer in-person public forums. We will do another one next Thursday, the 21st at Wire Village School at 7 p.m. Okay, I got a question here. Do you think putting the pre-K playground in the high school area is wise because of higher chance of damage by older kids? Dory, Christian, I'll hand that over to you guys.
I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, I think whenever you're mixing pre-K and high school students, a lot of consideration needs to go into that combination. And we've certainly heard that from the school building committee as well as from the district. The excitement really is around that VOC-Tech program, early childhood VOC-Tech, that could be a really nice combination. And also the opportunity of introducing students to a brand new, exciting, revamped David Prouty High School at a young age and parents. But in terms of that question in particular on the playgrounds, we have really tried to look at how we can kind of separate those two programs as much as possible so that the pre-K has its own entrance, that the pre-K playground is near that entrance so that the students can gather there before or after school, similar to how they do now at East Brookfield. And that is, you know, fairly substantially differentiated from the high school outdoor areas. So on the ad reno in particular, it's kind of even on a different level because the site has such great topography. It's a little bit further down and separated from the rest of the school on the west side. And on the new, because it's off of that wing, again, it's towards the very south side of the new construction and pretty isolated from the rest of where the high school students should be accessing the athletic fields and other outdoor classrooms and outdoor opportunities.
Perfect. We got another question. Was it considered to make this a true junior, senior high school, grades 7 through 12? So Paul, I'll kind of get into the logistics of MSBA, and then if you want to take on kind of the history leading into that process the district took on. So the district has a feasibility study agreement with MSBA that, in terms of this topic, enrollment of the building of the high school, it indicates what enrollment we're to study. So in this particular feasibility study agreement, our two enrollment studies that we have a charter on is grades 9 through 12 at 305 students, or we could study we have to study the grades 8 through 12 at 410 students. The feasibility study agreement does not account for a true junior, senior high, grades 7 through 12. And Paul, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
So that was exactly right. And when we went into Boston and met with the Mass School Building Authority, our building committee delegation met with the Mass School Building Authority officials. And that was exactly what we had come to at that time, specifically around enrollment. What had happened in terms of our layout in the district is an area that would have been considered, say, back in the early 2010, 11, and 12 window was a patch of land next to or near Knox Trail. And today, that same piece of property has a solar field on it. So that is not a possibility to have happen. And MSBA was made aware of that. And this is kind of why we've looked at what property the district has available to them and can be utilized for the purposes of building a high school facility for grades 9 through 12 or 8 through 12 per the charter and agreement for this current project.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul.
Yep.
We got a third question. What are the sizes of the auditorium, cafeteria, and gym in the new build compared to now/remodel? So Dory or Christian, if you want to get into those. So we got the auditorium.
The auditorium in both the ad renovation scheme would be the same size it currently is, and the school building committee voted to have the auditorium in the new construction option be the same size, so there would not be any reduction, given that the space is an important space in the community. It's one of the few places that can hold over 400 people at a time. So that would be the same. The gymnasium would be larger. It'd be 12,000 square feet. And the cafeteria will be slightly smaller in the new than the current cafeteria is in the ad reno. That's an area that the MSBA doesn't reimburse well. They would have you potentially, to get the maximum reimbursement, have a very, very small cafeteria and have 3 lunch services. And the district operates on a 2 lunch service. So the district will have a slightly larger cafeteria than MSBA typically reimburses, but smaller than the current cafeteria, which is actually quite large. So we've tried to sort of hit a middle ground there to achieve the best efficiency all the way around and cost effectiveness.
And just as a clarification, the gym would be the same size in both, because it's new.
And the same size in both
Yep.
schemes, yes, but larger than the current one.
Right.
It's sized to allow for 2 practice courts and then an overlapping court, and plus the addition of bleachers on both sides for the game court.
Okay, thank you. Another question. If 8th grade is moved to David Prouty, then will 4th grade from Wire Village be moved to Knox Trail? That would make room for pre-K at Wire Village. Paul, I don't know if you want to take that or.
Sorry about that. My mic was muted there. So we would need to bring both those questions forward to the school committee for public hearings. Per the regional agreement, it is very clearly stated that those decisions would be made by the school committee. And 2 public hearings, one in Spencer, as well as one in East Brookfield would need to take place by the school committee to listen to public input and public feedback, hear if those are viable options. And if so, then they would have the final say on moving 8th grade and or as well 4th grade. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Paul. Another question, how would a new construction design heat and cool the building? Could the new system just installed be utilized in any way? Dory or Christian?
Christian, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're looking into, so there's a few new boilers at the existing school, and we're looking at trying to reuse those in both options. And so we are looking at a natural gas based heating plant in particular. We're also looking at various cooling options. There's a strong desire to use this school year round. And we're seeing that in schools across the state, that there's more air conditioning involved in these schools than there ever has been before. Probably not the entire space, but large percentages of it. And so we're looking at various options for that. Again, I think a critical component is adding more ventilation, which is really, so in some ways the efficiency might be similar to what you see now, but the amount of fresh air that you're introducing to the building is just tremendously different between what the existing conditions are and what we're proposing.
And just to add that the cost at this point is making the assumption that a significant amount of the school would be air conditioned, as Christian said. And ultimately, we'll be comparing different approaches. There are some spaces of the building that are smaller and might benefit from air source heat pumps, and other areas that are larger and benefit from a hydronic and air combination system. So a lot of options will be on the table.
Thanks, guys. Another question here. It's stated on the slide that capacity of the renovation or new school is 305 students. We currently have more students enrolled than that. What happens if we don't have enough space in the future? So maybe Dory and Christian, if you want to get into the architecture of that, and then maybe Paul, if you want to get into some history of the MSBA back and forth on.
Sure, I think I can take that on, answer that question a lot, because it will come up, we know. So again, the process with the MSBA involves a detailed enrollment study done by an outside consultant that has no association with this project team at all. But it's something that's agreed to by the district and the MSBA. And that's based on a lot of detailed projections that the MSBA's consultant makes. And that sort of locks in the study number at 305. That doesn't mean that you could never have more students than 305 in the building as it's designed. The amount of square footage per child in Massachusetts is actually higher than most every other state in terms of per student within the school. So within that standard, the classrooms we're designing are going to be 100 square feet larger than the current classrooms. And the school would be able to handle within that enrollment bubbles as happens. You have a grade that comes up and it's 20 students larger. They're spread across those classrooms. That handles pretty easily. If you consistently had higher numbers, as sometimes has happened, a district often has a bubble right away because people come back to the district who've been choosing out. But then after a while, that typically settles down into and meets that enrollment prediction. But if it doesn't, and if the district finds that it's consistently drawing, and we hope it does, lots of people to the district, and there's a need to expand the school, we have to design in such a way as to allow for an expansion. So, one option currently is that the areas that we've identified as potential pre-K and 8th grade area, if they don't happen now, that area is easily designed to accommodate an additional classroom wing, which would allow the school to flex and expand down the road. But over time, that has not been the trend in Spencer East Brookfield, so it's been difficult to talk the MSBA into shifting their thinking on that.
Thank you, Dory. At this point, that's the last question we got.
All right, well, I guess we give them a minute more if anyone else has any last minute questions. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Paul?
Around the enrollment, we did a really in-depth, deeper dive, especially with the assistance of both our communities providing planning board permits. We were very fortunate in looking at the fact that Spencer had a significant number of permits pulled. And right in 18, there were approximately 110 being looked at. That was factored in. We brought that information to the MSBA. As a matter of fact, it was hand delivered by Representative Berthium. He did an excellent job, literally hand delivering it to the MSBA on our behalf. And it's important to note that that was factored into the enrollment counts for the 9 through 12, as well as the 8 through 12 configurations. As the architects had indicated, Dory, Margot, and as well the OPM, Phil, there is consideration for an uptick in enrollment when a new building comes online. That is taken into consideration. And we know, based on the enrollment projections from the New England NASDAQ as well as the MSBA, they both show the enrollment leveling out to about 100 a class long-term. So the approximations will work out well for what we're looking to build. We can't overbuild. They're very cautious of that, but we have taken into consideration, as Dory mentioned in her response, the fact that we can always expand the facility should it be needed. And that factor is also in place for Wire Village, Knox Trail, and East Brookfield. So even when we were working with different firms in earlier projects for the district, Jones Whitsitt has taken into consideration that this could be necessary 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, and allowed for expansion should it be needed. This region can grow, and there's lots of land in both communities. So it is a possibility, and we always leave that room for growth in our planning.
And just to add to Paul's point there, where he was speaking with early on in the project, the MSBA gave us a lower number, and that was when we spoke with our representatives and we hand delivered information from both towns, both building departments in both towns. The school district showed trends, and this is a higher number than we were originally given. So we have, we're very cognizant of the trends of the trends with enrollment due to building and people coming and going from the district.
Another thing to mention just before we leave that subject is that the current David Prouty High School has I think 20 very consistent, similar shaped classrooms. And the proposed school actually did add additional classroom space over what the MSBA guidelines called for, but also importantly adds all those vocational spaces at 2,000 square feet per program. That's quite an addition over what the current school has. So even though it does ask teachers to share classrooms and to use the school more efficiently, and it does allow for that, it actually also provides more space than is currently in the school because of the expansion of many programs, including the arts programs. You want to close us out, Mike?
Yeah, that's it, Phil. For questions.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. And as was mentioned earlier, there will be a live in-person public forum October 21st, which is next Thursday. Correct me if I'm wrong, 7 p.m. Is that correct? 7 p.m. at Wire Village School. Is why we'd like to do these meetings at the high school, but Wire Village has the connectivity and has the largest space for us. So we hope to see people in person on Thursday. And thank you everyone for attending tonight, answering questions, asking questions, and in filling out these surveys for us. This is going to give us a lot of information, and it's just the beginning. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.